The ambulance in the Cannonball Run wasn't a prop. It was the exact machine Hal Needham and Brock Yates drove in the real 1979 race, dragged straight onto the set without a whisper of explanation. The rest of the production operated on this exact same twisted logic. A Vegas car chase filmed without permits, a script that remained unfinished until the final day. And on a Georgia highway in 1980, a 24-year-old stuntwoman named Heidi Von Beltz left the set on a stretcher, a quadriplegic, never to stand again for the remaining 35 years of her life. The film that Burt Reynolds declared immoral to turn down did one more unforeseen thing. It taught Jackie Chan that the best part of a movie sometimes lurks after the screen fades to black. The global tradition of blooper credits was born right here from a stuntman-turned-director who never asked anyone for permission. Fact 1. The outlaw machine wearing the dust of '79. Look closely at the roaring Dodge ambulance tearing through the wind in the film's opening. That wasn't a hastily hammered-together prop from a 20th Century Fox woodshop. That vehicle still wore the highway dust from 1979. Director Hal Needham and writer Brock Yates didn't need a design team. They had sat behind that very wheel, burying the throttle of this exact machine in a real-world underground race known as the Cannonball Baker. Pop the hood, and you wouldn't find a standard emergency engine. Lurking inside was a brutal 440 cubic inch power plant built by the legendary Landy, a mechanical beast that could effortlessly hurl the bulky van to 145 miles per hour down the interstate. Needham and Yates were genuine street racers. They knew that time spent at the gas pump was the death knell of any race. So, they carved 4 high-speed fuel filler holes into the chassis, allowing them to gulp down 90 gallons of gasoline in the blink of an eye. And to slip past the iron-fisted checkpoints of state highway patrols, they rigged a fake medical emergency right in the back. A buddy, painted up as a groaning patient, lay on a stretcher surrounded by bogus medical machinery and a web of tubes. It was the perfect grift. They actually conned the cops and floored it. But reality on the asphalt is always crueler than theory. As the rig pierced the scorching heat of the Palm Springs turnoff, the Dodge's transmission died a sudden death. They were forced to retreat in bitter defeat. Yet, instead of condemning the treacherous machine to a scrapyard, Hal Needham locked it away in a garage. He patiently waited for his moment. And when this cinematic project was greenlit, he dragged the monument of his past failure straight onto the set. The on-screen police cruisers chasing that Dodge were, ironically, hunting the very machine that real cops had let slip through their fingers. Fact 2. Chronicles written on the asphalt. If the film's script leaves you perpetually dropping your jaw at its impossible scenarios, you need to swallow a hard truth. The screenplay you wore out on your old VHS tape wasn't birthed in the carpeted boardrooms of studio executives. It was a chronicle, transcribed directly from the blistering blacktop. Brock Yates, a veteran journalist for Car and Driver magazine, wasn't some armchair typist confined to an air-conditioned office. He was the founding father, the man who personally engineered the infamous underground race dubbed the Cannonball Baker Sea to Shining Sea Memorial Trophy Dash, starting in 1971. This wasn't a sanctioned tournament with an organizing committee, prestigious gold cups, or safety barriers. Its rule book consisted of a single-sentence drive any vehicle. Take any route from the East Coast to the West Coast, and whoever does it in the least amount of time wins. Through 5 iterations from 1971 to 1979, sitting behind the wheel of this unprecedented rally, Yates lived deeply within a true underworld. He witnessed every dirty trick of the asphalt outlaws. He documented how drivers outsmarted the authorities, how they bent and broke every traffic law across state lines. He hoarded every real-world deception, every muttered curse, every drop of sweat on the steering wheel, molding them into a narrative that Hollywood censors could never have fathomed. Yates wasn't writing a script. he was compiling the dossiers of outlaws, laying the groundwork for a rebellion far larger than merely crossing the finish line first. Fact 3. The 55 miles per hour Manifesto of Defiance. Why would grown men risk their lives in an underground race with no prize money, fully prepared to face jail time or be obliterated on the highway? The answer doesn't lie in spontaneous recklessness. It was a calculated, public act of defiance. In 1974, America was drowning in the oil crisis. The federal government mandated a national maximum speed limit of 55 miles per hour to conserve fuel, to men who worshiped the freedom of the open road. This law felt like a noose tightening around their throats. It stripped away the privilege of speed from a generation raised on the roar of V8 engines. Brock Yates didn't create the Cannonball to seek attention. He aimed it directly at that legislation. He believed that superior machines, piloted by hardened drivers, could absolutely command high speed safely on the interstate. The movie you mistook for a slapstick comedy was, in reality, the largest megaphone Yates ever wielded. It broadcast a direct challenge to millions of American men suffocating daily under these restrictive policies. It showed them a parallel reality, where outlaw vehicles cruised at 145 miles per hour without a second thought for the flashing red and blue lights of the police. Behind the roaring laughter in the theaters of 1981, the audience was secretly participating in an underground protest. But before that rebellion could hit the silver screen, the architects behind it had to amass a playbook of legal evasion that even the criminal underworld would respect. Fact 4. The Professional's Guide to Evading the Law. Every trick used to outwit the authorities on screen wasn't a work of fiction spun by a comfortable screenwriter. Remember the two fake priests played by Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr. That religious camouflage was a real-world grift. Rewind to the 1972 race, where a crew of 3 men actually donned clerical garb, casually piloting a Mercedes 280SEL across America when pulled over by the cops. They calmly stepped out, tapped on the window, and solemnly swore the luxury sedan belonged to a high-ranking bishop who urgently needed to reach a mass. The officer took the bait and let them walk. Yates simply uprooted these real-world hustles and handed them to Hollywood royalty to recreate before the lens. On the surface, it looked like comedic gold, but at its core, it was a meticulously drafted manual for evading the law, where every trick had been stress-tested by the cold sweat of drivers staring down state troopers. And naturally, a playbook is never complete without its flesh and blood prototypes. Fact 5. The Declassified Files. Almost every reckless character gracing the frame possessed a real-life rap sheet. Take, for instance, the dirty-playing street racers. They were inspired by notorious real-world crews like the PRDA, led by driver Tony Adamowicz. In the actual race, his team shoved drums holding hundreds of liters of backup gasoline right behind the driver's seat of a Chevy van. They willingly rode shotgun with a ticking time bomb on the burning asphalt, ignoring every safety standard just to minimize their pit stops. Every actor you see on screen is wearing the shadow of an individual who once blatantly pushed the pedal to challenge the legal system of the era. Brock Yates flipped open his notebook, pointed a finger at the most reckless deviants, and transformed them into cinematic icons. But sometimes, the reality Yates witnessed contained mishaps so darkly absurd and uncontrollable that filmmakers had no choice but to wrap them in a much glossier coat of paint. Fact 6. The glamour that masked the grime. Look at the 2 seductive women piloting the black Lamborghini, the outlaws who used tight jumpsuits and raw sex appeal to distract highway patrols. They stepped right out of a real-world all-female racing team called The Right Bra, comprising 3 professional drivers, Donna Mae Mims, Judy Straupus, and Peggy Nemchek. But in reality, their journey wasn't filled with glamorous slow-motion shots or neatly choreographed flirtations. Their run in a Cadillac limousine devolved into an absolute nightmare when the portable toilet installed in the back overturned, amidst the suffocating heat of the highway. That disaster turned the cabin into a foul-smelling catastrophe that no camera lens would ever dare capture. On film, all that wretchedness was surgically removed by the director. The gritty reality was scrubbed clean, locked tightly within a comedic shell to easily bypass the theater censorship boards. Director Hal Needham was convinced he could mold these highway outlaws, smooth out their rough edges, and perfectly orchestrate this chaos right in front of the camera. He believed he was the master of the game, but that arrogance was misplaced, because the moment the word action echoed, the entire set quickly went off the rails, free-falling into a territory governed by no one. Fact 7. The unpermitted territory. When Hal Needham shifted his wheels from the blacktop to the studio lot, he brought the underground racing scene's disdain for the rules right along with him. The production of this film operated as its own sovereign state, where permits were treated as mere scrap paper. Remember the suffocating car chase right through the heart of the bustling Las Vegas Strip. The crew yelled, "Action!" and let the roaring machines tear through the night without a single piece of paperwork ever being submitted to local authorities or the highway patrol. The recklessness didn't stop on the ground. To capture the sequence of a Learjet landing on a narrow road, the team blatantly bypassed every strict vetting process of the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. A jet plummeted toward the earth, skimming the branches right next to the hoods of cars, all of it captured in a guerrilla shoot. This sheer defiance ignited a series of federal investigations shortly after. Government agents came knocking, but the priceless rolls of film were already tucked safely away in the vault, ready to be developed. But duping the government was just the warm-up. To keep this high-stakes game alive, Needham threw his own personal fortune straight onto the gambling table. Fact 8. Betting with personal fortune. The two phony priests, played by Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., tore across state lines in a blazing red Ferrari 308 GTS in the well-oiled machine of Hollywood. Such expensive toys are usually leased from specialized prop houses, accompanied by thick stacks of insurance contracts. But Hal Needham didn't operate that way. That gleaming Ferrari belonged to him. It wasn't a stock vehicle, either. It was a machine Needham had personally tuned to quench his own thirst for speed. More importantly, it completely lacked any form of insurance coverage for high-risk stunt filming. Needham walked up, tossed the keys to Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., gave a brief warning, and stepped back behind the lens. He began filming erratic maneuvers that could have turned his massive asset into a pile of twisted scrap metal in a fraction of a second. That madness wasn't born from a fleeting moment of impulse. It was an instinct forged in a past where death was always lurking just a few inches away. Fact 9. The daredevil mindset in the director's chair. Hal Needham was never the type of director to sit comfortably in a safe canvas tent, sipping coffee and barking orders through a walkie-talkie, before taking the artistic reins. He was one of the most stubborn stuntmen in the cinematic capital. The man's medical records read like a laundry list of shattered bones. He had even been pronounced dead on set by frontline medics twice before being dragged back from the abyss. To Needham, the line between safety and a body bag was razor thin. He cast himself in the film in an uncredited role, the EMT sitting proudly in the back of the Dodge ambulance. He knew every lethal angle of the action sequences, every blind spot in the rearview mirror. This pedal-to-the-metal mentality was injected straight from the director's chair into every member of the crew. A machine was hurtling forward at maximum velocity, and the man steering it never knew how to hit the brakes. Fact 10. The wound that never closed. The price of that recklessness left a permanent, bleeding scar on the project's legacy. During a car crash sequence under a punishing time crunch, 24-year-old stuntwoman Heidi Von Beltz was strapped into the passenger seat without a standard safety harness. She was a world-class skier, but her experience managing risks inside a vehicle could be counted on one hand, when the car lost control and slammed into an obstacle. The devastating impact stole Von Beltz's ability to walk. A young woman who had walked onto the set with a boundless future was permanently chained to a wheelchair for the remaining 35 years of her life. Instead of facing the music, the production machine chose to turn its back. The tribute credits at the end of the film quietly erased the names of the entire stunt team to bury the incident from the public eye. Not a single person in the official crew ever stepped forward to explain where the safety protocols had vanished to that day. Even now, the complicit silence of those present on set remains a thick, impenetrable fog. The secret of that horrific accident remained buried deep beneath the dazzling premiere banners. That ruthless cover-up was the steepest price a human being could pay, all traded for a few seconds of on-screen laughter in a film project that was already fracturing from within. Fact 11. The loose theater of comedy. The chaos didn't just cling to the stunt vehicles, it infected the very way actors interacted in front of the lens. There was virtually no fixed script structure governing the set. Superstar Farrah Fawcett walked into the project believing she was shooting a serious drama. She diligently memorized every line, sculpting the psychology of Pamela Glover as a genuinely complex woman spiraling into a vortex of trouble. No one in the crew bothered to tell her that everyone else was just playing it for laughs. It wasn't until opening night, sinking into her theater seat and hearing thousands of people roaring with laughter at scenes she had played with deadpan seriousness, that Fawcett was struck by the horrifying truth. Her misplaced sincerity on screen wasn't an artistic choice. It was the casualty of an out-of-control production. Actors were shoved into the frame without even knowing what genre they were inhabiting. And when no one on set knew where the story was truly heading, the dark rooms of the editors became the only place holding the power of life and death. Fact 12. Desperate magic on the cutting room floor. When the reels from the set were shipped to the darkroom, the editors were greeted by a living nightmare. They received a chaotic, illogical mountain of footage filled with shattered takes. Characters would miraculously appear on screen and then evaporate without a whisper of explanation. Patchwork dialogues between scenes violently clashed. The jarring fractures in pacing that you noticed on your old VHS tape were, in reality, a desperate attempt to stitch broken shards into something that could be sold at the box office. They amputated the absurdities, concealed the massive plot holes with lightning-fast smash cuts, and prayed that the musical score would bleed over the rest. This surreal looseness wasn't part of the original blueprint. The primordial script had been penned for a completely different name, a shadow so colossal that this project would never truly escape it. Fact 13. The ghost of the King of Cool. The soul of this script was never forged for Burt Reynolds. It was tailor-made for the King of Cool, Steve McQueen. Throughout early 1980, Hollywood insiders were buzzing with rumors about the gritty icon's involvement. But the protracted negotiations hit a dead end, and McQueen walked away. By April 1980, the producers frantically scrambled to shove Burt Reynolds into the void. A mere 7 months later, McQueen suddenly passed away from a vicious illness. The sheer proximity of these two events left fans of the speed genre forever haunted by a question. What would have happened if McQueen had said yes and actually taken the wheel? What did the darkest, most primal, and most abrasive version of the Cannonball script look like before it was sanitized into a comedy to fit Reynolds writer Brock Yates took that secret to the grave, leaving behind one of the most tantalizing enigmas of 1980s cinema. The truth was buried alive, making way for an A-list star who stepped onto the set not out of a burning passion for the craft, but bowing to the absolute gravity of the numbers written on a paycheck. Fact 14. The record-breaking compromise. Burt Reynolds didn't nod in agreement out of artistic hunger. Acutely aware that he was the only box office titan capable of resurrecting the floundering project, Reynolds issued a cold, non-negotiable ultimatum: exactly 14 days of work on set, not a minute more. In exchange, he walked away with a record-shattering payday unseen in Hollywood history, at the time $5 million in cold hard cash, plus a hefty percentage of the back-end profits. There was no grand cinematic manifesto here. Later on, the actor himself would shrug and confess to the press that turning down a sum that massive would have been the true immoral act. He willingly peeled off his label as a serious method actor to pocket the giant check. And when the project's leader unapologetically weaponized the film as a naked cash grab, the other veteran stars began using the set as a theatrical stage to conceal their own fading vulnerabilities. Fact 15. The armor that smelled like apple juice. On screen, the image of a rugged Dean Martin, perpetually clutching a cigarette and a sloshing glass of wine, became legendary. He slipped seamlessly into the role of a drunken ex-racer masquerading in a priest's collar. The audience, and even many crew members at the time, were dead certain that Martin was bringing real liquor to the shoot. But the truth was a complete illusion. The amber liquid splashing in the fake priest's glass didn't contain a single drop of alcohol, according to multiple verified backstage sources. It was nothing more than apple juice. He meticulously used the facade of a washed-up drunk to maintain his rebellious, untouchable persona for decades. It functioned as the perfect shield, as long as the public believed he was intoxicated. No one would scrutinize the creeping exhaustion of his age or the heavy, suffocating pressure hiding behind his eyes whenever the camera zeroed in. But while Martin could comfortably mask his shadows with a glass of juice, for some other actors on set, the disguise they were forced to wear was born of a bitter, involuntary submission. Fact 16. The endurance of the Asian dragon. Behind the breathtaking martial arts and the mischievous smirk, Jackie Chan carried a massive, silent burden of repression. At that time, the Hong Kong superstar was desperately fighting to claw his way into the American market. The investors at Golden Harvest demanded his presence as a non-negotiable condition for funding the production. However, the script brutally stripped him of his heritage, forcing Chan to morph into a Japanese racer driving a Subaru and cramming his mouth with stereotypical robotic dialogue about high-tech monitors. Chan flawlessly executed every dangerous stunt, but this deliberate butchering of his identity left a bitter taste of ash in his mouth. He was forced to swallow his rage, accepting a role that spat on his cultural roots just to buy a few fleeting minutes of screen time in Hollywood. History would later testify that this very endurance, this profound sense of being marginalized on an American set, is what ignited his towering ambition. It drove him back to Asia to forge a cinematic empire where no one would ever be allowed to erase his nationality again. Fact 17. A slap in the face to the academics. Renowned critic Roger Ebert didn't hesitate to unsheath his icy pen to slaughter the film from opening day. He hurled a dismal half-star rating at the picture, sealing its fate with a venomous verdict, an abdication of artistic responsibility at the lowest possible level. A swarm of articles across elite publications dissected the script, sneering at the lowbrow comedy and gleefully prophesying a catastrophic box office bomb. But they horribly misjudged their audience. The men buying theater tickets in the sweltering summer of '81 couldn't care less what Ebert thought. They only craved the feral roar of a V8 engine, the gritty thrill of breaking the law, and a visceral escape from their suffocating reality. They flooded the cinemas, propelling the opening weekend revenue to the fourth highest in box office history at the time, and locking in a monstrous $160 million globally. The crumpled dollar bills pulled from the pockets of the masses turned the one-star reviews into an absolute joke. The audience, not the cultural elite, dictated the rules of the game. This hurricane of cash didn't just silence the critics, it blinded the Hollywood investors so severely that they made an incredibly reckless gamble. Fact 18. Greed outrunning the results. Normally, film studios hold their breath, waiting for the first week's box office returns to gauge market reactions before daring to whisper the word sequel. But with this project, pure greed outpaced the financial reports. The fever at the private test screenings was so manic that investors refused to wait for the official premiere. The contract for Cannonball Run 2 was signed and stamped while the film reels of the first installment were still bleeding out on the editing room floor. Director Hal Needham hadn't even finished the final cut. Yet the budget for the next chaotic ride was already poured directly into his hands. The producers knew in their bones they were sitting on a gold mine unearthed from men's insatiable thirst for speed. They wanted to drain every last drop from this chase formula while the engine was still running red hot. Before this film was born, the audience's habit was to stand up and march out of the theater the moment the screen started rolling the faded names of the production crew. No one stayed behind. No one waited. The credits were the ultimate signal of the end, and viewers reacted accordingly. But Hal Needham shattered that tradition. The director brought along a custom he had birthed from the Smokey and the Bandit 2 project, and officially cemented it as an indispensable course on the cinematic dining table. He intentionally spliced in broken footage, stumbled lines, and the awkward, embarrassed smiles of A-list stars into the final minutes. Instead of walking out the door, the American audience lingered in their seats, erupting in laughter as they watched their supposedly untouchable idols fumble and make mistakes, just like ordinary mortals. Needham understood something that the vast majority of his contemporaries ignored. Audiences didn't leave the theater because the movie was over. They left because there was no reason left to stay. He simply manufactured a reason. And that reason didn't cost a single extra dime of the budget. It was just footage destined for the cutting room's trash can. Now dragged into the light and handed to the audience as an exclusive reward for those patient enough to stick around. Needham demolished the wall separating the actor from the viewer, officially creating the culture of lingering in the theater to watch backstage blunders. But the one who reaped the greatest reward from that historic invention was not him. Fact 19. The invention that held the crowd. Before this film was born, the audience's habit was to stand up and march out of the theater the moment the screen started rolling the faded names of the production crew. No one stayed behind. No one waited. The credits were the ultimate signal of the end, and viewers reacted accordingly. But Hal Needham shattered that tradition. The director brought along a custom he had birthed from the Smokey and the Bandit 2 project, and officially cemented it as an indispensable course on the cinematic dining table. He intentionally spliced in broken footage, stumbled lines, and the awkward, embarrassed smiles of A-list stars into the final minutes. Instead of walking out the door, the American audience lingered in their seats, erupting in laughter as they watched their supposedly untouchable idols fumble and make mistakes just like ordinary mortals. Needham understood something that the vast majority of his contemporaries ignored. Audiences didn't leave the theater because the movie was over. They left because there was no reason left to stay. He simply manufactured a reason, and that reason didn't cost a single extra dime of the budget. It was just footage destined for the cutting room's trash can, now dragged into the light and handed to the audience as an exclusive reward for those patient enough to stick around. Needham demolished the wall separating the actor from the viewer, officially creating the culture of lingering in the theater to watch backstage blunders. But the one who reaped the greatest reward from that historic invention was not him. Fact 20. The thief of the legacy. From the dark corners of the set, Jackie Chan silently observed this tradition of rolling botched footage. The Asian star witnessed the raw thrill of the crowd, and he instantly recognized its latent, explosive power. When his contract expired and he returned home, Chan carried this concept back with him, entirely intact. He attached the out-of-sync action takes and his own agonizing, real-life injuries to the tail end of every one of his works, under Chan's masterful hands. The behind-the-scenes footage was no longer just a collection of comedic bloopers. It mutated into a public medical record, a trademark guaranteeing a blood-and-bone sacrifice for art that required no CGI. But what Chan did wasn't a simple act of plagiarism. He completely rewired its semantics. Needham used the blooper reel to tell the audience, "Your stars are human too." Chan used it to declare something entirely different. "This is the physical toll I paid to deliver this shot to your eyes." Every shattered bone was documented, every sickening, misplaced fall was replayed in slow motion. The Asian audience, and eventually the globe, were no longer just watching a movie. They were bearing witness to a gruesome invoice written in flesh and blood, projected publicly after every screen went black. The man who was forced into a fading supporting role, his roots warped on American soil that year, ultimately became the one to carry Needham's legacy farther than anyone in the original crew could have ever hallucinated. Hal Needham invented the door. Jackie Chan built an entire skyscraper behind it. Fact 21. The boss's final curtain call. The film's subterranean magnetic pull was so immense that it dragged in the ultimate symbol of American entertainment supremacy at the time. After listening to his close friends, Dean Martin and Sammy Davis Jr., rave incessantly about the lawless, utterly liberated days of filming. Frank Sinatra nodded and agreed to a fleeting cameo in the sequel. But the boss dictated his own rules of engagement, among 3 different script lengths timidly presented by director Needham. Sinatra pointed to the absolute shortest option. He demanded exactly 1 day of work on set. That morning, the living legend arrived half an hour early, coldly and flawlessly executed every scene without a single syllable of complaint. He scooped up his entire $30,000 salary, donated it straight to charity, and vanished from the set before the lunch bell even rang. No fanfare, no loud, backslapping farewell parties. That lightning-fast sequence was his final shot, permanently closing the curtain on Frank Sinatra's glorious cinematic reign, a fiercely arrogant, freezing cold, and utterly irreplicable final bow. Outro. That dusty VHS tape sitting on your cabinet shelf doesn't just harbor laughter. Beneath its chaotic, slapstick shell, it conceals a political rebellion fought on the interstate. It masks a movie set that operated like a lawless wasteland, where cold, bloodless financial contracts were signed alongside the chilling, deafening silence surrounding a paralyzed stuntwoman utterly erased from the credits. The laughter in those theaters has long since died out, but the vicious roar of the V8 engine remains. It serves as a haunting reminder of a gritty, unforgiving era of cinema, where people dared to barter their physical bodies and careers just to purchase a few seconds of absolute freedom on the silver screen. So, out of these 21 jagged truths, which dark corner completely collapsed your old perspective, altering the way you view the most deranged race of the 1980s? Was it the bitter endurance of Jackie Chan, the secret of Dean Martin's apple juice, or the outlaw ambulance that drove straight off the real-world asphalt onto the movie set? Drop a comment down below. We will continue to dissect other tapes bleeding with secrets from the vault in the next video.